Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Mid-Market Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Cass. If your team faces challenges executing on every new idea, or you're struggling with the sheer number of balls we juggle in the middle market, today's episode is for you. Andrea Jones is my guest today, and she would argue that you don't need a massive budget to fix this. You just need discipline and a framework she calls Executagility. Andrea is a former Intel engineer, a mother of four, and the architect of fractional project management for mid-market firms. She's here to help us manage the chaos of scaling up. So Andrea, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jeff. Nice to be here.
Yeah, so your career has taken an incredible trajectory from Intel process engineer, working mom of four, to running your own business. So when you look at your business today, what makes it unique?
The most unique thing about AJC Company is that we execute projects in part-time hours. And the very short backstory is when I left Intel and went and got my MBA, wanted to have a family, realized I couldn't work, or honestly just didn't want to work 80 plus hours a week. So I started the business to be able to offer services in the market by myself. And after having a couple kids, I realized I could do this in part-time. There's a lot of time we spend in work that isn't value add to the end needs or project that we're actually working on. So I started doing that on my own. And after about 9 years, once the kids were all born, I realized that there's an additional demand for this type of thing. And I reached out to women I had worked with at Intel who quit when they had kids because their spouse was still working a full-time plus corporate job. And that was very challenging. And so my team is intrinsically motivated to be efficient and effective. We have EQ also. And I would say that's our differentiator. People are a little bit sick of the overbilling of consultants, I would say. There's a lot in the market about how some of the larger firms are maybe not doing fantastic right now for some of those reasons.
Okay.
And we don't even play in the same ballpark. It's a pretty big differentiator.
Okay. So your team sounds like it's unique as well. There are other people just like you, Andrea. Is that what you're saying?
It's amazing, but there are lots actually, and I'm sure you know some, and probably your audience does too. Pretty typical. Start a job, maybe go back to graduate school of some kind, get back into your work, you're on a career trajectory, but you get married and want a family, and at some point it's a balancing act. And I think a lot of people don't recognize there is an option to be in the middle space. We think it's all in or all out, and I really don't think that's true.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Fractional is a unique kind of service that doesn't seem like it's been around that long. I don't know. Maybe you could tell me we're different. How long have you seen fractional type firms out there?
I remember in 2018 wanting to say we did fractional project management work, and people were like, what? So
okay.
It was not a term used back then. The pandemic certainly expedited recognition of the term fractional. I still believe that fractional is considered for more of a CXO role. The first most recognizable fractional role would be the fractional CFO. I think that's pretty common, COO even now, but a fractional PMO or project management office is still not considered super prevalent, I would say, though the word fractional makes sense now to most people in the market.
Well, fractional seems to make a lot of sense to people in the middle market that are not staffed up, right? And that's the market you're focused on, correct?
It is, yes.
Yeah. Okay, good. So I just want to go back maybe to your working career. When you were at Intel, I'm guessing process and systems were at the core of everything you did, right? You're shaking your head yes. So that's a yes.
100%. Yeah.
So you're a mom now, and there's a lot more chaos in your life over the last 15 years or however long it's been. How does that kind of fit with what you've learned into your business world?
Yeah. I feel like I didn't really mellow out till I had kid number 3. I have 4, as you said. I think when I started my career at Intel, I was inserted into a going concern that already had standard operating procedures, statistical process control. There was a document for everything. There was a metric for pretty much everything as well. We even had response flow checklists. And what that was were, if something goes wrong, here is how you contain it, collect the data, escalate, right? And of course, safety and containment were hand in hand. It was a process to follow when things went wrong that were unexpected. And every time something new went wrong and we figured out how to solve that problem, we would then codify the solution to that particular problem. So the response flow checklist, or the RFC, was a way to say, okay, here's the problem. Let's see if we have a known resolution to this particular problem. And if not, here's how we generically will be safe, contain the issue, collect the data, escalate the issue so that we could then troubleshoot it and get down to root cause and resolve.
And you documented that so other people could go back and look at that in the future?
Yes, absolutely. And so I think that with parenting, there's not always a response flow for every situation, but every kid is a little different. That actually ties together in my head right now. There is a way to be agile within structure and framework. And with parenting, you have to do that all the time. You can't just let your values go out the window because something different has happened. If, for example, a sporting event goes late and you need to feed the kid before the hour-long drive home and you head over to Chick-fil-A, so you can still follow your values within a bit of a structure. And I think parenting has taught me that. Also taught me that there isn't an SOP for the specific things always, and that's also okay. I think the more important thing is to continue to try to be honest and authentic about it and to find that motivation to keep going every day.
Yeah, there's not really a handbook for raising kids. You learn on the fly. And is that what you're saying has come into your business as well?
Yeah, a little bit. And also the idea of being able to manage a business and manage a family and not sacrifice the values I have in either case.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit more about your business here since we're getting into that. And I maybe want to start at the beginning. When you and I first met, my first thought was, okay, project management kind of feels like table stakes to me in business, but it's really not. I don't think everybody gets it, right? So you certainly do this full time. When you're thinking of the middle market companies that get a lot of things wrong, what is it that they get wrong?
We'll talk about what they get wrong, but first I would like to normalize why they may not be getting it right.
Hmm.
I think it's very normal when you're in a mid-market situation and you don't have a lot of excess EBITDA to hire people who are 100% their workday focused on execution of growth projects, right? That's normal. It's not until you get a little bit bigger that you can afford to do that. At the same time, it's also normal that a CEO is not going to be a tactical project manager. That person needs to steer the ship. If that person isn't steering the ship, who else is going to do it? There's nobody else whose job is to steer the ship. So it's very normal not to be able to do project management well because you haven't hired for it and you yourself can no longer do it. What they, I think, get wrong the most, I call it, my quote, ambiguity is the enemy of execution. Ambiguity is the enemy of execution. And so as a CEO pulls him or herself up into maybe more of a visionary role, they forget to be specific about what their expectations are for the growth projects. So here's an example. I was talking to a CEO who's trying to put in a payroll software with his company. That's what he wanted to do. They were about a 40-person field construction business. They poured concrete in the field. It was supposed to be done 2 quarters ago, and it didn't get done. It was then going to be the next quarter, still not done. Now it's the current quarter, and it's halfway through the quarter, and he has no idea where the thing is. And I said, well, what do you mean by done? And he's like, I don't know, just, the payroll software, people are using that. I'm like, how many people? That's when I found out there were 40. And how many projects are they assigning their hours to? And he says, well over 100. I'm like, okay, 40 people, 100 plus projects. Can you map the people to the projects? Yes, but they hadn't done it yet. He wanted the controller running this. She was busy with her day-to-day job and felt like she didn't have any help. Anyway, we got to the point where it was, so your expectation for done here is you want 40 human beings to have downloaded an app onto their phone, because that's what the new software was going to be for the channel, and have allocated at least 1 hour to each project to which they are assigned by the end of the quarter. That's what you mean by done. We could do that. Would that be done? And he's like, well, when you put it that way. But just to say, hey, I want this payroll software used, does that mean people have downloaded it? Does that mean the back end is filled out? Does that mean that people are using it or that they know about? Like, what exactly do you mean by done? So I think being very, very clear on what your expectations are, which does take a little time to get that level of clarity. And sometimes a project is so new that maybe you can't, in which case I think you need to chunk it into shorter durations. And then the other thing they forget with this ambiguity is who specifically by name. Who is going to do this project? Who are you going to have responsible? Who is going to manage it? If it's not you, CEO, and it shouldn't be, remember, steering the ship. So I see a lot of times where CEOs will say they want the accounting department to do this or the IT department. Well, if there's more than one person in those departments, right, people just point the finger or they just don't step up to the plate. Not very many people are willing to take on additional work voluntarily.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be very clear. I think one quote people can think of, I listened to Brian Halligan, he's a co-founder of HubSpot, and he said in a podcast he did that if you want to kill your plant, ask two people to water it.
Yeah.
Exactly. You got to be real clear, real
If
specific.
somebody's not responsible, nobody's responsible, right?
Exactly.
I mean, yeah. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. All right. So that's the biggest thing they get wrong. Some of them get things right. So talk about that as well.
I think that middle market can be more agile in the sense that they don't have as much red tape to go through usually.
Yeah, people are probably wearing different hats in the middle market. They probably are doing multiple things. But I'm guessing, and tell me if this is wrong, if you're in a mid market company, you don't have the project management folks. So the CEO is going to go back to that same person that delivers on everything, right? So is that true? You're shaking your
Oh,
head.
yeah.
Yes. It's
I
okay.
have a persona name for that. Yeah.
Okay, well, tell me in a minute. So let me finish the question here. So, how do you or how do companies not overburden these folks that are true performers when they still have another job and they get all these extra jobs?
Yeah. The persona is IT Tim. So
Okay.
if you think about any project that a company may be doing, right now there's a lot in AI, of course, the IT department, and often IT Tim, your rock star in IT. Tim is fairly competent. And I have a KPI that includes alignment, competence, time, and structure. Competence on average with 184 companies that have tested this is the highest. So Tim's probably pretty competent. The problem is you put him on 5 or 6 projects and he still has, to your point, a day job. If something goes down with the email, that's a problem. If there's any phishing scams, that's his problem. If the servers go down, if the printers go down, like everything is Tim's problem. And he's now got the new AI tool you're trying to incorporate in the company. He's the systems administrator for your ERP system. He's trying to stitch together different things for your website developer or whatever. And he doesn't have time. So the way to get rid of that is back to being less ambiguous and more specific. My recommendation, and I have a very straightforward tool for this, list out your projects in priority order. Like if we would only get one thing done this quarter, this would be it, right? Only one. And then if there were only 2, and then you say who's the sponsor of that, which often is a CEO or a CFO, a C-suite person making decisions on budget or decisions on timing or escalation. Who's coordinating it from a project management perspective? That ought to be a tactical person. They don't actually have to have technical expertise in the domain. And then by name, not the accounting department, not the IT department, by name, who's on the project, who's doing anything. And that can be done as a leadership team with the ultimate managers of these human beings. And if you see Tim's name there 5 times, please know that's almost going to be impossible.
Yeah.
I say 1 or 2 things at a time if the person has a full-time day job. And there's some research that would indicate people are value add to the company 56% of the time, so they have 44% left. Of course, we need, our theoretical availability is different than our actual capacity. We need some time to go to the bathroom and get started on our day, stuff like that. But if you can be focused with about 10 hours a week, 25% of the time, you really can get 1 or 2 things done, but there needs to be a mechanism for that, kind of a protected structure.
Okay. Yeah. Don't have the ambiguity you were talking about before as far as assigning projects. So it makes sense. Well, let's stay kind of on the talent discussion. And we talked a little bit about fractional people, people like yourself that you typically try and find. So how are you finding and vetting them?
Yeah. Like most business founders, that first set of people were people I had worked with, people I'd worked with at Intel, people who had master's degrees in industrial engineering and automation engineering and electrical, who had been process engineers or automation engineers managing projects. I reached out to people there, and we still get a lot of people through our own personal network. I think that's pretty normal for everybody. However, we have developed a very robust hiring process. We did that a few years ago, and we have 3 rounds of interviews, and I think they're helpful theoretically in general. The first one is a competence interview for what we have to do. We need people who are experienced and have a persona that I look for around not being too nice and being interested in the results. So we're looking for that. And when we pass the technical, which is really the table stakes, we do a humble, hungry, smart interview based on the ideal team player by
Okay.
Patrick Lencioni.
Okay.
And I'll send you the link to his book. But humble, hungry, smart is a good way to think about not getting too big of egos in your company, people who are willing to do the work, that want to do the work, and have
Hmm.
a reasonable level of EQ. That's what the smart is. It's emotional intelligence as opposed to, we've already handled the competence here.
Right. Yeah.
The third interview that I do personally is our values interview. We have 5 values at AJC, and I interview people against them in the way I learned at Intel, right? Tell me about a time when. And one of ours is responsiveness. If I don't hear something around when I tell someone I'm giving them something by a certain date, if I don't have the answer by that date, I will tell them by that date when I will get back to them again, right? And nobody likes to be left on the hook or left hanging. I
Hmm.
would rather have a no than a I don't know or a nothing. So I have to hear something like that. We can go through our values, but our last one is the time value of life. And I think this is different than most companies because my team, we look for projects that are able to be done in part-time. That's why we
Hmm.
serve primarily the mid-market. Once they get big enough, they get their own project management office. They have projects that need full-time, construction, big software development, things like that. I am looking for a real story that hits me in the gut as to why part-time is something this person needs. And that helps my customer because none of our customers want their budget to just randomly go over every month. I need them to have an intrinsic motivation. And I think if you can find that generally, like why are people interested in working in this role for your company? Part of it is the company's job to give a compelling reason why it's interesting to be there. And if you can find that somebody really does align with your values and your reason for being, then I think that's better than any other motivation you can find.
Okay. It sounds like a good structure, Andrea. And I'm interested because I feel like you've been around, your business has been around for more than 10 years, right? You're 20. Wow. Okay. So talk about the values part of that because not every company has a written set of values, right? But you use them. It sounds like you use them regularly. So talk about maybe how you got into that because I'm interested in that based on some of the discussions I've had with other mid-market leaders.
So first 9 years of AJC Company really was me only. I didn't have a team and I needed to be very flexible. I didn't codify my values at that time. I think it was around 2018 or so. I remember my husband and I were on this big road trip. We were in Oregon driving down to Disney with our 4 young kids. And we started talking about values and what they were. And that's when we codified them in this car. He's driving and I'm like taking notes. By the way, that's another way to get it done. Like, do it
Mhm.
when kids are watching TV in the back and you're on a road trip.
You got to multitask, right?
Yes. And I wanted to have a very specific story for every value that we had. So I would say things like the communication responsiveness, I already mentioned. Servant leadership, I think it's a cliche term, but we really, really believe it. Like I
Mm.
personally, when I was still doing full-time consulting, only 1 or 2 kids, I remember I was running a construction project and we needed, this is dating me, handouts, like pieces of paper for a meeting. And of course there were admins up the yin and I could certainly have sent them whatever and been like, print out 30 copies for me, collate, staple, blah, blah, blah. But they're busy too. And I was like, this is required for this project to be successful. It's going to take 5 minutes. And it would take longer for me to ask somebody and explain. I'm going to do the handouts myself, you
Mm.
know? And I tell my team, I'm like, if you are facilitating a mapping session for a new ERP system with the customer and there needs to be lunch because you're going all day, you order lunch, right? We'll expense it. That's fine. Don't feel that that type of thing is beneath you. It's not
Mhm.
beneath you because anything the project needs in order for it to be successful is part of your responsibility.
Yeah.
Yes, you can delegate for sure, but quite frankly, they're paying us to make sure this goes well and they don't have people. So you need to do it.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I need to hear something like that. Like that's part of the humble thing too, right? Like it's just, we're not here to be these elevated $800 an hour, give you advice only and not make sure things happen consultants. That's not what we do.
Mm. Okay.
Focus on improvement is one of ours. We are using AI heavily right now and really trying to be intentional about that. I know we'll talk about that later. Being accountable. We have to be accountable to what we say we'll do so we can role model that, and we have to hold people accountable.
Mm.
We have one person who's still growing in her career right now, and she likes to be nice. She wants to be liked. I think being a parent just beats that right on out of you. You still want to be liked, but when you have kids, you're like, I can't be their best friend. Like if I'm their best friend, they're going to end up super overweight and playing video games all day.
And not be a productive citizen in the
Oh my
future.
gosh, yeah. So that value and that sort of intrinsic being a parent helping with kids is helpful. You can't be so nice that you let people off the hook all the time.
Mm.
And if there's something that happens, for example, a very specific one, a lot of our customers, when they select a big ERP system, they want all of their leadership team, all 9 of them, to participate in every demo that there is with every system vendor. Well, 9 people for 90-minute meetings in accounting and operations and in procurement, like it is nearly impossible to schedule something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we have to be the ones who raise the hand and say, if you do that, this is how long it will delay your decision.
Mm-hmm.
And this is only in our fee alone. We do a floor every month because we're still working hard to coordinate and schedule. That takes time too,
Mm-hmm.
It will inflate your budget, right? If you're not comfortable with that because you want to maintain budget, then you're going to have to give a little bit. Give me the priority list of who needs to be there. If it's the overview, sure, let's get them all. But if it's the accounting module, let's get the accountants, right? Do we need everybody? No. We'll record it. We'll ask the questions. You can trust us. We'll be there.
Mm-hmm.
So that accountability is very, very important in our line of work.
Okay.
And our last value is called the time value of life. As I already mentioned, I'm looking for people who have a reason to want to be flexible part-time because it helps our customers to not be pushing our billables. We don't really want things to go overtime, and I need to see that. Yeah.
Okay. So this brainstorming session and the car ride down to Disney, you created the values with your husband in this discussion. As you fast forward a couple years and you look back, were you pretty accurate? Were those values still the ones you use today? I mean, is
Oh
it
yeah.
pretty much kind of the way you envisioned the company and that's the way you operate it today?
That is the way I operate it today. We did that in, I think it was 2018, so almost 8 years. I have thought about, should we adjust these? Are they different? And they're really not. And I've heard this before. I'm sure you have too. Founders and founder-led companies really do embody the values of the founder. And for good or for ill, right? And if I ever get purchased by a private equity, heaven forbid, they probably would change those values pretty darn quick. I think it's okay, though, that I have these values and I imbue them in my company because not every customer is a fit for us either. And that I have learned, that has been a tough lesson to learn. In fact, my first Vistage share, he said, you are trying to do AFM. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's AFM? I'm sure I can do it. And he's like, anything for money. I'm like, ooh, shoot. Do I want to do anything? No, of course not, right? It's okay if we're not a fit. If somebody wants a consultant that is available to them 60 hours a week and bills them for it, then don't hire my firm. That's okay. I want to put a stake out there and only be attractive to people who are a good value fit for us. I think it's the right way, but it might not be the right way for someone else.
Well, it's right for you and your company, and you're hiring by it, and you're living by it with your customers. So I think that's great, Andrea. I think it's an interesting topic because I feel that not every middle market leader that I talk to has envisioned those values yet. How do they want people to act when they're not around? I mean, they are the values, right? Those people are. And some of them talk to me a little bit about how the aha moment came to them that I need to do this. I need to, have a little bit more detail and use it in our business every day so people understand it. And you've already done that. So I think that's great. So let's move on. Let's go to AI. You mentioned it earlier. Talk about where you are in the AI journey.
Okay. So focus on improvement is one of our values, and I like to live our values. And I feel like I don't know everything about AI, so I'm certainly not an expert. However, it's here and it's a tool, and we might as well try it. So what we do, I probably do more than we've asked everybody to do, but we're now starting to grow. So I'll start with what I've been doing and how we're growing it.
Okay.
I personally have chat open almost all the time. This morning, I used it to help me detect whether a particular email I got was a scam. I also use it to write content for sure. Although I go back through it and I add a story or I'll modify the verbiage because I really think you can tell if AI has written something still. There's, the quiet this and the Tuesday that and the bullet points. It's very obvious. We use it for proposal writing, and this is where we've expanded. So we have Fathom is the AI note taker that our team uses, and we have paid versions, and everybody is on a version that we pay for so that I have access to it. And so we can now pay more intentional attention to the customer in a virtual call without having to worry so much about transcribing all the details of what they say. It's transformational. I get that some companies and their compliance and their fear back to if they're too big of a company, maybe they can't, but quite frankly, so helpful. And in project management, when I speak to Vistage groups and CEO roundtables, I'm like, you need to use it because then the project manager doesn't have to task out. No, you really did say, Andrea really did say she would do this. No, I wrote it down. Well, now you've got the recording, like it's proof. Everybody uses it. Yeah, we use it for helping with proposals because then I can pay attention to what the person is saying, and the recording has gotten all the details about their specifics so that I can demonstrate I understand what's going on in their business. We have a tool that evaluates our proposals. We use it. My husband is our CTO now. He retired. He was a 27-year vet at Intel, retired about 2 years ago. He's using it to code for us. We have a KPI that we use and some back-end training that we do. So he's used that. And I think it's okay to continue to test, but be intentional about where you want to use it. One thing I'm seeing in the market, and I'm seeing this in manufacturers right now, we do a lot of ERP selection implementation for mid-market companies who don't have a project manager. This is a once in 20 or 30 year digital transformation.
Yeah.
And most companies who need this, they need financial reporting and they need some way of tracking their inventory better. That's a real driver. So inventory companies are manufacturers, distributors, field service professionals. They are starting to think or get the idea that AI can custom develop a system for them so they don't really have to change the way they do things. It'll be less expensive than buying a SaaS system off the shelf. They'll own it, and then they don't have to pay licensing fee. They just have to pay the hosting in whatever AWS or whatever they're using in the cloud. I'm seeing this a lot, and I am cautiously optimistic, but I'm also concerned. Just put some level of discernment on this and evaluate the same way you would for any other major transformation, major decision, and look at a couple sources. And our firm is uniquely positioned because although we are using AI, we're not trying to sell the software, the development, right? We can maybe help a little bit, but that's not what I'm trying to do. And I don't take kickbacks. So if we recommend a top 3, we're not getting paid from that. We're only getting paid from our customer. We're only in it for their best interests.
AI is the big buzzword, and I think a lot of people are jumping pretty quickly is what you're describing, and maybe trying to do more with it than it's maybe is a good fit for.
Think of them as a human. Give them their own email. Give them access, but not full read. Be thinking of them as a person.
Double check them, hold them accountable like you were just describing, right?
Yes. And that's a really good point, the accountability. I do believe you still need a human in the loop because what is the consequence to an AI if they do something wrong? Are you going to fire them? You're not going to pay them? The only consequence is to you looking stupid or making a gigantic mistake. So you've got to have a human, even if they can do more because they've got 10 agents doing their thing, there still has to be a human that has a real consequence and can truly be held accountable.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, we could spend a ton of time on AI, but I want to spend a little bit more time on you, okay? So as you look back, right, and as you transition from the corporate world to kind of where you're at today, who has been your best coach or mentor?
I appreciate this question. I don't have one coach or mentor. One of the reasons I even say ambiguity is the enemy of execution. My husband, when we were newly married, before any kids, I remember he tells this story. I would go into the kitchen and I would walk around the house. I'm like, wow, this house is a mess. And I would just say that and then I'd walk away. And he was like, yeah, it is. Sits there in his chair, not doing anything. And I'm like, but this house is a mess, you know? And I get all mad and he's like, if you want me to do something, why don't you say, hey, honey, feel like the house is a mess. Would you be willing to clean up the kitchen? I was like, oh, I need to be specific and clear in my intention. He's like, I want to help you, but be very clear what you want me to do. So yeah, that's fair.
Is that hard? Is that hard to say?
Yeah, no, I'm very blessed. But it's harder to hold someone you really care about accountable sometimes.
Yeah, you have different emotions with your spouse, and no doubt about it. I'm being a little tongue in cheek here because my wife and I would have a hard time saying that. But to your credit, it's clear to me he's been integral to some of your mentoring and coaching as you're developing your business.
Definitely. Yeah. And Alex is Scaled Agile Framework certified. He has helped us with development of our Executagility model, which is a very lightweight version of Agile Scrum.
Mm,
We took out all the buzzwords that cause people's eyes to glaze over, like points and velocity, t-shirt sizes, epics, and kept in tasks by name, sprints,
mm,
review, retrospective, and we tacked on prioritization on the front end. As you and I were discussing earlier, can't do everything at the same time.
mhm.
And we baked in change management. So I say, well, if you're working on this project and you do these little sprints like we coach, every 2 weeks, you're doing a 30-minute max review of what happened over the previous 2 weeks, what the results were, how much you got done. Perhaps there's a little demo. You're perhaps saying, we did this, and the next round we're going to test it out. And then the next round after that, we're going to ask others to test it for us. You bring in everybody who ultimately will be using the new process, the new system, the new AI, whatever it is, to that 30-minute review. And people will push back. They're like, well, that's a very expensive 30 minutes if all my highly paid people are. I'm like, yeah, well, it's even more expensive if you pay all this money to do it and then they don't do it. What does
Mhm.
that cost, you know? So you can have them come for 30 minutes and then they start seeing what's happening in the project, even if they're not a part of the doer team. And that just slowly over time, it's not a surprise. You knew it was coming, right? You've even seen it. You've had the opportunity to ask questions. It is a change management tool baked right in.
Mhm.
And then it becomes very gradual. It doesn't even feel like a change anymore.
Yeah. All right. Those are good things. Good advice. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about my impression of you. You're juggling a lot of things between family and business and life. What gives you the most energy and what do you like the most about being in your business today?
I love coming up with ideas and rallying the troops. So, have you heard of Working Genius by
No.
Patrick Lencioni? I've got the book here behind me,
Okay.
the 6 types of working genius. It's a way to find where your joy and energy are in the work life cycle and what frustrates you. It's
Hmm.
not a competency thing. Most people can do all the things.
Okay.
It's more what causes you to light up.
Okay.
And I like to come up with ideas and I like to get them moving. When I get frustrated is when people aren't doing the thing. I'm like, come on, just do this. Like, I'm sort of done. I've told you everything you need to know. I'm bringing you along for the ride, and I just don't want to, I want other people to take it over the finish line, which is
Hmm.
ironic, right? I'm a project manager, although I have a team now.
Hmm.
So when I get to play in my genius areas, I am the most energetic.
Well, good. All right. So, what do you see for your company over the next 5 years? What are your aspirations?
When I started the company, it was literally so that I could continue working in a meaningful, paid way while having a family. That was
Hmm.
really the only impetus. I wasn't going for world domination at the time. And so it was a lifestyle business. But now, my season has changed. And I very much value the idea of a going concern that doesn't depend on me, which really implies I need some sort of recurring revenue system. That's where the coaching is coming. So right now, I have this awareness. I want to develop something in recurring revenue, something that doesn't depend on me, something that can be a predictable going concern that possibly is saleable or transitionable or something. And the 5 years is that it'll be done, right? But the middle, we're still testing out. I'm not quite sure. I've
So,
tried lots of different things and we have our methods we follow our own Kool-Aid, drink the Kool-Aid to test it. We'll figure it out. But that's
okay.
fun.
Well, that's cool. Okay. All right. So, final question here for you. Okay. The energy you give, I think, is great. Okay. And you've certainly worked with an awful lot of mid market leaders. And if you think about a new executive or a new leader, what kind of advice would you give to them as they're starting out, especially in the middle market where they're juggling so many things and their head might be spinning when they first take on the job?
Yeah. I had a president that was in that exact same position. Newer president had a lot of ideas. In fact, he had 37. And the only reason I know that is because I helped him list them out. So if you walk into your home office or your office at work and you notice that it's a total mess, there's papers everywhere, you don't know where things are located, you can't find the stapler, what is the first thing you would do? You'd clean it up, you'd organize it. That's the first thing you would do. And so I think for people who are coming in with a bunch of ideas and a bunch of overwhelm, the first thing to do is organize it. The best way to do that is to write it down and not have it be just spinning in your head anymore. Once you've written it down, and I actually think the pen is the instrument of mind. I think you should actually write it. Eventually you should put it on paper and maybe you dictate it, whatever way works best. But like for me and this President Brad, we just started writing it out on his whiteboard. And he was floored by the fact that there were 37 things he wanted to do, and by the end, I was like, are you sure that's not it? Are you sure there's nothing else? He was like, I can't think of anything else, and then he feels mentally like satisfied and all out there. And then we prioritized what's important to the business now. What are the three main drivers? Because you want to do the things that make sense and need to be done ultimately, but the things that need to be done now, done first. So the book I wrote, Stop Starting, Start Finishing, which is back there, and the Executagility Field Guide talks about that process. Get it all out, prioritize in terms of importance to the business, and just pick one or two and just get those things done. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good enough. And certainly don't let yourself get stuck in analysis paralysis, right? In the mid-market, there's really not a ton of rules. You can rewrite them. If after the first sprint, this isn't going well and that's 2 weeks time, then pivot, that's okay, right? But if you just sit around and do nothing, time will not stop for you.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I've heard some people talk about maybe waiting 6 months or something so they take it all in before taking action. How do you relate to that comment?
I am okay with that if it's done intentionally, right? So if you're saying, I want to get to know this company, especially if you're coming in from the outside, maybe you're not a promotion into the role, but you're coming from the outside. How about saying, well, by the end of 3 months, I'd like to know these things, or I'd like to be very familiar with these things, right? Give yourself a particular goal, and then you can measure yourself against it. Did I achieve this? Do I know these things well enough? Because otherwise, I think the tendency is to let that drag out. If you don't want to make big changes for 6 months or a year, at least figure out what you do want to learn and measure yourself against that. So it's being intentional all the time.
Okay. That seems like a common theme for you, right?
Absolutely. And that's what triggered me to write the Executagility model and the field guide. Before that, we hadn't truly codified how we operated our own projects.
Okay. We haven't really talked in detail about Executagility. It's come up several times. Maybe we should talk just briefly about that because that's a key part of your business and what you do, right?
Yeah. It's very straightforward. I like to say a fifth grader could understand it. And the reason for that is when you have a team that has a day job, the majority of their prefrontal cortex is occupied by the day job. And if there's any ambiguity about what they need to do, the day job will always win. So there needs to be super clarity. It needs to be so simple.
Okay.
So all it is once a quarter, you prioritize. It fits nicely with the entrepreneur's operating system or any other model that you may use. If you don't already prioritize quarterly, then you do need to start. Prioritize down to the level of human being on the team and the role of sponsor, the role of project manager, and the why you're doing any of it. Those are the drivers.
Okay.
And then you communicate. So that's step one. Prioritize step one, ideally with the leadership team. Then you communicate that to everybody whose name is somewhere on the list, ideally beyond. One salesperson is on the team, but there's 6 total in the company. They all need to know this is something you're doing.
Yep.
And then we have a KPI that I like to measure things. I'm a big fan, measure what matters. We measure the Executagility, which is a company's ability to execute the growth plans. Executagility is clearly a made up word. I made it up and I trademarked it. And that means I get to make up what it means, the ability to execute the growth plans. So quick 18 question survey that goes to all the people and it gives a number, an overall number and a number about the alignment, how comfortable, do they agree with what you're telling them to do here? Do they feel competent to be able to do it? That's the competence score. Do they have time to do it, right? Did you put Tim on 5 projects or did you only put him on 2? If you put him on 5, he's probably going to say he doesn't have time. If you put him on 2, he's probably going to be cool. And then are they confident in the structure? You've announced they're going to get started right away. They're going to measure it. It's going to be in a fashion that can be transparent to others and they know what the finish line is.
Okay.
So do a quick score. You can adjust the priorities if you have put too much on and your score looks terrible. But it usually does look terrible the first time, Jeff, so I would take that with a grain of salt. Okay. And then the project manager activates. So in the Executagility model, once the scores come back, which we only give people like 2 days, right? Best to just get it done immediately. Sometimes in the room, put the QR code up, just have everybody take it right there. They will do a very basic scope template. They will get the team started with their sprints. They use Fathom or some other AI tool to record the tasks. And then they hold people accountable 15 minutes a day. Manufacturing should be very used to this. Every manufacturer that's good that I know, Intel included, has a daily huddle. What are we going to make today? What's the production schedule? Right? This is the same thing, but for your project. What are we going to do today? And I recommend doing it first thing in the morning, just like I exercise at 5 a.m. before everything hits the fan for the day.
Yep.
Have that meeting first thing. And usually what people do is they either get their task done right before, or if you have it from 9 to 9:15, they'll get it done right after. Before the customer starts calling, before the other work piles up. They just get it done because tomorrow you're going to ask them again, what'd you get done yesterday? What are you doing today, right? Any roadblocks? Work progresses at the cadence in which you keep people accountable. But it's helpful to kind of get in the weeds a little bit to get them started and then let them go. So they do that. They do the review, like I mentioned. They do a very brief retrospective, try to make their process better. At the end of the quarter, they summarize their results back to the sponsor, who goes in and says, okay, we got this done, or we didn't. Here's what's left, and reprioritizes for the next quarter. That's it. Very straightforward.
And you mentioned that you wrote a couple books. Just talk about where people can find your books.
They can find them at executagility.com on a resources page. If you go to ajccompany.com, you can link to Executagility and find them there as well. They're on Amazon for purchase, so we link to them there.
Okay, perfect. All right, Andrea. Well, look, I really enjoyed today. I enjoyed hearing about your history, how you developed, and I hope you can work through the next aspiration over the next 5 years. So thank you for being on the show.